Welcome to Mecum Presents On the Move, brought to you by State Farm. It's the show geared toward keeping you up to speed with the latest auto news, event coverage, and expert industry insight. Now, here are your hosts, Matt Avery and John Kraman.
Hey, and we are so glad you've joined us for another On the Move. I'm Matt Avery, executive producer of The Transmission, and joining me is John Kraman, lead TV commentator for Mecum Auctions on NBCSN. John, we have a show with all kinds of car content planned for today.
Well, we do, Matt, and it's really great because as we begin to really rev up for the final quarter of 2020, we've got some really great topics to talk about today. What are we going to be talking about during segment 2?
Segment 2 is all about Corvettes. We are checking in with Steve Garrett, who is the president of the Corvette Club of Kansas City, as well as the host of the Corvette Today podcast. So we'll be talking all things Corvette, including what Steve knows about some plans for an electric version of the current C8 that is coming very soon. So a lot of exciting stuff. John, before we get to it, what's on deck for segment 3?
Well, we're going to take a visit to an event both of us attended. We were very proud to be invited to the FCA Fall Preview, where we had a chance to look at 9 different vehicles. You and I both spent time there separate from each other, which is good. So it's going to be a lot of fun to kind of hear your thoughts in regards to some big announcements from FCA. And I can just tease a little bit and say it's going to be packed with horsepower.
Well, John, we are right around the corner from the upcoming Dallas auction, which really serves as the kickoff to an extremely busy fall for the Mecum Auctions team.
Yeah, it's a lot going on, as I said earlier, Matt. Keep in mind, over the next 4 months, we've got 8 auctions. And, of course, right now we're gearing up for the big Dallas auction. That'll be October 15th through the 17th. Taking a look at the website this morning, it's really starting to get packed with a lot of great cars. I saw one that just jumped right out at me. It's lot number S90. It's a 1970 Boss 429 Mustang. And it's in a 1-year-only unique color combination, grabber blue with the white interior. It's beautifully restored. I'm guessing that car is going to bring certainly north of $200,000. Something about those Boss 429 Mustangs always get my attention, so that's going to be one I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Anything pop out from the upcoming Dallas auction that you saw, man?
Yeah, what I liked was lot number S151. It's a 1991 Ferrari Testarossa. John, this thing has just a hair over 10,000 miles, and it is really striking. You know, it's interesting, obviously, Ferrari is very well known for red. This Testarossa is actually in white, kind of channeling some of that Miami Vice vibe.
Yeah, and I had actually seen that car too. It's selling at no reserve, so that's going to put some extra tension on that. Let's run down the rest of the schedule so folks know exactly what we've got going on. The end of October, the 29th through the 31st, the Indy Fall Special. That'll be our second trip there this year. And then we go to our traditional location, Las Vegas at the Convention Center, mid-November. It's November 12th and the 14th. Davenport, Iowa for our tractor friends. I did talk to Paul. He's going to come on and talk to us not only about tractors and muscle tractors, but a wide range of vintage trucks are going to be at that auction as well. That's November 19th through the 21st. Kansas City, another familiar location for us at Bartle Hall, November 19th through the 21st. And then we'll finish out this year with Houston, December 3rd through the 5th. And then, of course, we start getting geared up right away for 2 big auctions in January. The world's largest collector car auction, Kissimmee 2021, January 7th through the 17th, 3,500 cars. And then, of course, a couple weeks later at South Point, Las Vegas, for the world's largest motorcycle auction. So a lot going on over the next 4 months. And just want to give a tip of the hat to the Mecum operations staff led by Harold Gertis for continued efforts to make all of these auctions happen, to be able to work with the venues and the local authorities to make sure that we're doing everything right so we can go in and execute these auctions. Means a lot to all of us. So it's all good.
Yeah. And John, turning our attention to car news, I know we've talked a lot about Ford with their Bronco, but something that caught our eye was some news of a big block crate motor, essentially. What's the latest?
Well, and Ford is making kind of a big deal about calling it a big block, and that's unique because we're now in an era of decreased displacement engines, a lot of turbocharging, hybrids, electric power, but Ford going the opposite direction with what they've done. And we reported on a couple months ago that they announced a all-new 7.3-liter V8 putting out 430 horsepower, but by the way, that displaces 445 cubic inches, so it kind of goes back to that muscle car era displacement, and that is going to be an optional engine on the 2020 Ford F-250 Super Duty. Some of the reviewers say that it's got a really cool, throaty exhaust tone. The standard engine in that truck is a 6.2-liter V8, gas V8, and of course at the top of the line is a diesel engine, but they're expecting this engine to be quite popular for those that still resonate with the torque. And talk about torque, 400 foot-pounds of torque at 1,500 RPM out of that gas V8. So this will be a very serious towing vehicle, and looking forward to seeing one of those out on the road. I'm especially looking forward to hearing that exhaust note. Anything come across your radar screen?
Absolutely, and like the news that you had, mine also has a throaty exhaust, but it's in a brand new 2021 Yenko SC Stage II Camaro. Now, we've talked about specialty vehicle engineering before. That is the crew that has built a whole host of performance vehicles. We talked a couple weeks ago about their GMC Cyclone pickup truck. We've talked about their Yenko Camaros and before as well, but they have just announced that for 2021, the Camaro will get a slight bump in horsepower up from the 2020's 1,000 horsepower. Now for 21, it will get 1,050 horsepower. That is being pumped out of a custom-built 416 cubic inch supercharged LT1 based engine. Just 50 of these will be built on a 1SS or 2SS with the 1LE option platform in coupe only. And the cool thing, John, is that they do retain Camaro's warranty, as well as the engine and supercharger has a 3-year warranty. Now, pricing for these bad boys, it's going to be into six figures. Expect them to be in the $115,000 to $120,000 range. But pretty neat to see the Yenko name stay alive, and pretty neat to see performance cars continue to be a red hot with enthusiasts.
Matt, as we all know, you wrote the book on Copo. You're a Yenko enthusiast. Does it surprise you that over 50 years later, there's still a tremendous allure to that Yenko nameplate?
Not at all, John. And the reason for that is actually found in Don Yenko's formula that he used for success. Back in the day, he went about creating these legendary cars that had maximum power that enthusiasts were looking for. They were cars that could be found in showrooms, and they were cars that were readily identifiable that had unique looks to them. And so it's just interesting because SVE is essentially doing the exact same thing.
Right.
These new Camaros have that major power. Here we're talking about a streetable car with over 1,000 horsepower with a warranty, and they also look the part. They have those nods to Yenko's heritage with the iconic crest and side stripes. So they stand out, they look distinct. And so little surprise that Don used that kind of a formula decades ago, and today it's still working.
Mecum Auctions is proud to bring you On the Move with Matt Avery and John Kraman. For more on the world of collector cars, head over to mecum.com. Now let's get back to the show.
I am so pleased to report that we have a very special guest on board for segment 2, Matt. His name is Steve Garrett. Steve is founder and host of the Corvette Today podcast. He's president of the Corvette Club of Kansas City. He's a DJ at the #1 radio station in Kansas City. That's KCFX 101 to Fox, classic rock. He's been on the radio for 43 years, and he's got an incredible 2014 Corvette C7 that we're going to hear about too. Steve, thank you so much for joining Matt and I today.
Guys, it's a pleasure to be on your podcast. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, man, it's our pleasure. So take us back to day one, Steve. How did you get involved with cars and Corvettes?
Well, if we go all the way back to day one, John, I got started and noticed Corvettes with that 63 split window. And I think a lot of guys that are into Corvettes got into it because of that car. But it just kind of kept growing and growing. And just basically in 2013, I had paid off my house. I had paid off my daughter's college. I had zero debt. It was time to get a 2-seater sports car with a lot of power. And I looked at Lamborghinis, which are out of my price range, unfortunately. But I looked at Porsche. I looked at the new Jaguar F-Type. I looked at Maserati. And then I came to Corvette because I play hockey every Sunday in a men's league. And one of my defensemen, I'm a goaltender, and one of my defensemen said, I can help you get one of those new C7 Corvettes. He was the sales manager at the Hendrick Chevrolet dealership in Kansas City. When I took my wife to see that new C7, she said, get that. forget the Porsche, forget the Jaguar, get the Corvette. So that's really what got me going, and it's been knee deep ever since.
Well, and the Corvette community is better off for it. You're well known recently, just started it this year, the Corvette Today podcast. As the founder and the host, tell us some information about your idea and how that got started and how well it's doing. And maybe just as importantly, how can people find it and listen to it?
Well, thanks for the opportunity to talk about Corvette Today. I started this podcast in mid-April. There was no podcast available specifically dedicated to Corvette. My wife keeps telling me that I need to go sell Corvettes at Hendrick Chevrolet here in Kansas City, Missouri. And I said, wow, I don't want those hours because I couldn't be on the radio. I'm also the public address announcer for the Kansas City Mavericks of the ECHL, which is an affiliate of the Calgary Flames. And I'm the only voice of hockey here in Kansas City for the last 31 years. So I had to find something as an alternative to keep my knee deepness into Corvette going. And I thought, my daughter and son-in-law actually said, why don't you do a podcast? It's like, oh my gosh. So I started looking around. There's no podcast dedicated to Corvette. So what we do, it's a weekly podcast on all of the major platforms. It's on iTunes. It's on Google Podcasts. It's on Stitcher. It's on iHeartRadio. Every major podcast. If you have a smart device, you can say, Alexa or Hey Google, play the podcast called Corvette Today, and you're connected. But I interview each week, starting on Mondays, people that are affiliated and prominent in the Corvette industry. As a matter of fact, what we also started to do this month, as a matter of fact, is we started every other week doing news and headlines about Corvette because it is called Corvette Today. So we want to keep people knowledgeable on what's going on with the new C8, some of the cars that are coming out, some of the things. We talk about news and headlines, we talk about racing and rumors, and then the lighter side of Corvette. And it's been going great. There is a podcast Facebook group called the Corvette Today Podcast Group on Facebook. You can join that. There's also a way for you to sign up to get weekly notifications about Corvette Today at corvettettoday.ck.page. I have a website, which is corvettetodaypodcast.com. You have to put the word podcast in there as well. And so far, so good. Everything, knock on wood, is going really great, guys.
Steve, as John mentioned, you are also the president of the Kansas City Corvette Club. How soon after you got your car did you jump into the club scene?
Well, that's an interesting question, Matt, because I bought my car on Tuesday, October 15th of 2013. Not that I remember anything specific or anything like that. But the Corvette Club of Kansas City met on the third Wednesday of every month. And what they do is they give you a membership to one of two Corvette clubs in Kansas City. And I decided, well, I'm going to join this one because it's more in my part of the Metroplex. So I went the next night to the Corvette Club, and a lady that was the membership director looked at me and said, hold it, you're the radio guy, aren't you? The hockey guy too. I said, yeah, I'm that guy. So I joined the Corvette Club of Kansas City, and a couple years later, this is my 5th year as president of the club. And we have grown the club from about 160 members to over 250 members. Our high was last year. Even this year, guys, during a pandemic environment, we still have 227 members, which is a tribute to the club and what we're doing and growing the club and having fun events.
Now, one of those, Steve, we were talking a little bit off air, involves some cannolis. Tell us a little bit about tell us and listeners, how did that event come about?
Matt, this is a fun story. So I subscribe. Lamborghini has always been my car. You know, that white Countach as a teenager was the poster on my wall. So I've always really gravitated toward Lamborghini. Well, I subscribe on YouTube to a gal named Heather Ballantyne. She is a Lamborghini salesperson in Toronto. They had an event called Cars and Cannolis. And I just watched that maybe 3 weeks ago, the beginning of September. Well, September is National Cannoli Month. One of my family friends, I know it's kind of ironic, but one of my family friends is, I've known this guy for over 40 years, owns probably one of the best Italian restaurants in Kansas City. It was a 5-star restaurant. Back in the old days when his father ran it, it was white glove service with tuxedos for all the servers. It's called Jasper's Restaurant in Kansas City. You can look it up and you'll see all the rave reviews. So Jasper Jr., JJ, is a longtime friend of mine. Like I said, I've known him over 40 years. And I said, JJ, it's National Cannoli Month. Why don't we do, instead of like a cars and coffee style thing, let's call it Corvettes and Cannoli. He said, oh my gosh, I love that. So we had a cars and coffee style event, and I called it Corvettes Coffee and Cannoli because there is a hometown coffee place here in Kansas City called the Roastery. We got the Roastery involved. We had, in maybe a week and a half's notice, over 65 Corvettes participate this last Saturday in this cars and coffee style event. JJ was just thrilled. If you look on Facebook and look up Jasper Mirable, Mireble. No, I'm sorry. Mirable. Jasper has a different cannoli every month or every day in the month of September. As a matter of fact, he's writing a book called, Today's Cannoli or something like that. But he's gonna have a book coming out. But we did this event. We had a fabulous experience. And JJ said, Steve, I do different cannoli style get-togethers and events during the month of September. This by far was the best. He said, we've got to do it every single year. So Corvette's Coffee and Cannoli is now born.
Speaking of events, Mecum in Kansas City, your hometown, is quite a tradition. And I'm just so very happy for the past couple of years. You have brought out quite a group from the Corvette Club of Kansas City, where I had a chance to spend time with both you and your group, talking cars, explaining how Mecum works, taking them around, a little behind the scenes at a Mecum auction. Not going to be able to do that this year because of the pandemic. But guess what, man? We are coming back to Kansas City the end of November. We'll be there for 3 days. How does Kansas City feel about the tradition of Mecum Auctions participating in the car community there?
John, we love having Mecum Auctions here in Kansas City. As a matter of fact, guys, I will tell you an interesting story. Back in my early days of work, my business career, probably in my early to mid 20s, I worked at an ad agency here in Kansas City. When Dana started his auctions, he advertised and promoted the event through our ad agency, and I did all the radio and TV commercials for Dana's auctions way back in the day. So it's something that's near and dear to my heart. And I'm so glad that you guys were able to come, because originally you weren't able to be in Kansas City this year. So when you got that November date, it was like, oh my gosh, the heavens have opened up. I was so excited. But what we've done with the Corvette Club of Kansas City, Mr. Kraman has been gracious enough to lead, probably 40 to 50 people in the club in a behind-the-scenes tour of the Mecum auction. We have done that for 2 years in a row, and we were so excited to do that. It's one of those special things that we do with the Corvette Club of Kansas City, with the Mecum auction. We kind of feel like the Mecum auction is like an honorary member of the Corvette Club of Kansas City, just because we have that affiliation with you guys when you come to town.
Steve, I have seen a photo of the 2014 C7 Corvette Coupe that you've mentioned, and I describe it as a rolling showcase for carbon fiber. What kind of modifications have you done to your prize C7?
Oh my gosh, John, how much time have we got? Actually, this is one of the first one. It's number 1,445 off the line. It is a 2014 C7 Z51 Stingray. I have called it now the Carbon Fiber Edition Stingray, not to be confused with the Carbon 65, because my car has way much more carbon fiber, but I'm a carbon fiber fanatic. So everything that was black or black metallic, which Chevrolet calls carbon flash, has now been replaced with carbon fiber. Now that means exterior, that means interior, that means engine bay as well. So I have spent a god-awful amount of money on carbon fiber for this car, but it is really something. I went for the classy but aggressive look, and I think that I have accomplished that car. You can see it on the Corvette Today podcast Facebook group. There are pictures on there. So if you go to Facebook, just look up the Corvette Today podcast group, and you'll be able to see pictures. But it's been about 7 years in the making. As a matter of fact, on September 19th, the car turned 7 years old, and I'm just about done. I've got one more modification coming in on Thursday of this week. And after that, I'm really looking hard to find something else to put on it, John, but I'm having a hard time finding something else to add carbon fiber wise.
Steve, you mentioned that it's a good season to be a Corvette enthusiast with such excitement with a new model launch in the C8. Tell us a little bit, as a passionate enthusiast yourself, what were your thoughts when you heard about the new C8 and the change in powertrain?
Matt, that's a great question. It is a great time to be either a Corvette owner or a Corvette enthusiast. This C8 mid-engine platform is revolutionary. It really rivals anything in its class. And we always talk about this when we talk about any model year Corvette, it's the best bang for the buck. Now, the C8 was benchmarked against Porsche and Ferrari. I can tell you for a fact, because I've driven one, that this car will stand up to anything that's on the market. And when you figure something in the mid-engine range is going to probably cost you about $235,000, and you can actually get into a C8 for $60,000. Wow, that's a game changer. A lot of people have said, Steve, what are you going to order? It's like, well, you know what? On the C7, I was an early adopter because literally, again, my Corvette is number 1,445 off the line. But when the Grand Sport and the Z06 and then the ZR1, I'm salivating still over the C7 ZR1s with the big wings.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, you know what? I'm just going to wait a little bit and see what's coming, because as you guys might know, we are going to have a Grand Sport. We are going to have a Z06. We will probably also have a ZR1, but we will also have what is called the Zora edition, which is rumored to be 1,000+ horsepower. So I'm going to sit back and wait and see what comes in the C8 lineage, and then make a purchase a little bit later on.
So will that purchase, I'm curious, would that purchase include selling your beloved C7, or would you keep that and perhaps add a C8 to your little collection?
Oh gosh, John, I don't think I could sell that car. You know, I put so much of me, 7 years of putting me into that car. I still love driving it. It's a manual transmission, so I love raking gears just like any Corvette enthusiast does. But it would be difficult for me to really sell that car. I think I'm just going to add to the stable of cars with a C8 at some point in time down the road.
Steve, with any of your discussions with some of the Corvette staff, or even your own thoughts or observations, what's the chance that C8 will see some sort of electrification?
Matt, it's going to. As a matter of fact, if you listen to the one of the two Corvette Today news and headline editions, you'll know that the EV models are looking to come out actually in 2023. That's the rumor right now. So I'm sure at some point in time we are going to see that. Plus, Chevrolet keeps renewing the trademark of E-Ray or E-Stingray. So I'm sure at some point in time, we're going to see an EV model, probably with all-wheel drive. So it should be an exciting car that'll be right in line with what everybody's doing as far as going to hybrid cars or battery cars.
I'm guessing, Steve, that in the Corvette Club of Kansas City, you've got members with Corvettes representing all 8 generations of the car. I just want to make an observation and get your response to it. And that is, it looks like the release and the excitement of the 2020 Corvette, the C8, the mid-engine car, the game changer, as we all know, has not impacted the desirability or the value of the Corvettes from previous generations. If anything else, it's actually helped put the heritage of the Corvette going back to 1953 back up in the spotlight. It's important at Mecum Auctions because Corvettes are the number one model represented at auction, representing about 10% of our total annual consignment. So we're selling about 2,000 Corvettes each year. What are you seeing from your end as far as interest on all generations of Corvettes?
An interesting question, John, because I know that even working with my the corporate sponsor for the Corvette Club of Kansas City is Hendrick Chevrolet of Kansas City.
Okay.
And I know that looking on different websites, whether it be CorvetteForum.com or MidEngineCorvetteForum.com, but the desirability of the C7 Corvette has gone through the roof. You
Right.
cannot find a C7 Corvette available for sale. It's just been crazy. And I think C6s are also seeing an uptick in popularity as well. So I think that the C8 mid-engine platform has done something not only for its own lineage, but for previous generations of Corvette. It's just crazy. As a matter of fact, we did with the Corvette Club of Kansas City a drive-by for a birthday, a 50-year-old guy in the northeast section of Kansas City. His wife wrote to me on our Corvette Club of Kansas City website and said, would you guys do a drive-by? My husband is a Corvette fanatic. He's 50 years old. He's never owned one. We had probably 15 cars that went to his house one Sunday morning, and he just called me yesterday and said, I'm going to get a car. I've waited long enough. I've got a couple of colleges to pay for. I've got one wedding to pay for, but he called me yesterday and said, I'm just going to go ahead and get a car. So we were talking about two different cars, and this guy's ready to buy, and they're both C7s that he was looking at. So the popularity and desirability has gone through the roof.
Well, Steve, we really have enjoyed having you on today. We really appreciate not only your interest and your passion and your leadership in the Corvette community, but also sharing that same passion for those of us at Mecum. Hopefully, we will have a chance to get together and see you in November. In the meantime, stay safe, my friend.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Matt. It's been a pleasure being on your podcast. Keep Mecum going strong, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys in Kansas City in November.
Don't adjust that dial. On the Move, we'll be right back. Our program is proudly presented by Mecum Auctions, the world's largest collector car auctions. Now back to Matt and John.
John, that was the sound of a 2021 Challenger Superstock firing up, and that was just one of many sounds and sights that you and I got to take in at a recent FCA media preview where you and I got to check out a whole host of their latest products. A big part of the presentation that we got to experience was what was new with Dodge. Why don't you fill listeners in on what we got to see and what your thoughts were of the vehicles?
You bet. We had a chance to take a look at 3 new performance Dodge models, and that throaty exhaust sound that we just enjoyed was right literally live out of the tailpipes of a car that Dodge is very proud of this year. It's really intended for not only for high-performance street use, but also for drag racing use. 807 horsepower out of that supercharged Hemi platform, displacing 6.2 liters. That has become a performance legend, Matt. That engine has been around since 2015. We first saw that on the Charger and the Challenger Hellcats going back a ways, and they've continued to refine that engine, putting out extreme levels of horsepower, yet maintaining reliability all the way. Very impressive car. Considered to be absolutely top of the line in the Challenger lineup, with a definite tie-in back to the big success of the Demon Challenger, which of course was a one-year-only car in 2018, but not sharing the exact platform. This is a car with a different strategy, with, as I'd said earlier, putting a lot of priority on high-performance street use in addition to a car that'll turn mid-10-second quarter miles at the drag strip. Really impressive. What did you think of that Challenger Superstock?
it's interesting how Dodge continues to keep the pedal to the metal from a brand perspective with these kind of halo performance vehicles that really get people excited and get them in the showroom. I think the strategy is paying off. And I mean, we see that because now another vehicle that you and I got to see was the Durango that now has a Hellcat. Seems like the same strategy is being employed that we saw with Challenger and Charger.
Right, and that was big news. The 2021 Durango SRT Hellcat, that's their four-wheel drive SUV, has a performance version of that same 6.2-liter supercharged Hemi. Horsepower rating, 710, and it is being described as a three-row, room for the family, great towing capacity, yet also a very ultra-high-performance vehicle. And another thing for everybody to keep in mind if you're thinking about 2021, it is going to be a one-year-only vehicle. And I asked the engineer that was there on site, why are you only making it available for 1 year? And he said simply that it didn't look like it would be able to meet the standards, and he didn't specify if it was emission or fuel economy standards in the 2022 model year. So the bottom line on that new hot SRT Hellcat Durango, it's a 1 year only. It'll be an instant collector's item, not limited production. And let's crank up and take a listen to the exhaust note of what is now the hottest Durango on the planet. Really cool. And then, of course, the Charger's got big news for 2021 as well. A new performance version, once again raising the bar, the red-eye version, just putting out 797 horsepower on that same engine platform. It's also got the wide body bodywork. And, Matt, it's really impressive when you consider that this basic platform has been around for over 10 years, but each year FCA has gone to work and has tweaked and improved not only the ride characteristics and, of course, the horsepower is getting all the attention, but also the appearance and the styling of these cars, too. And they're incorporating a lot of aero devices on the car, particularly in for the engine management of getting air into the engine, getting air out of the engine compartment, making sure that this thing runs cool and it's reliable. Very, very impressive. And I'm really looking forward to getting more information on the Charger Red-Eye because, as Dodge says, it is the ultimate high-performance family sedan, and with a lot of options. We're expecting the price of that car to be well under $100,000. Let's take a listen to the exhaust of that one as well. This is the Charger Red-Eye display, putting out 797 incredible horsepower. Wow.
Well, and like you said, John, it's so interesting that these are sounds coming from, first and foremost, family cars.
Right.
You know, vehicles that, not that long ago that were strictly two-seaters. But here you have vehicles that have plenty of room for back row passengers. In the case of the Durango, like you said, you even have a third row. So it's really fascinating.
Well, and the power surge from our friends at FCA continues, Matt. You had a chance to spend some good time. I spent some time there as well, taking a look at the Ram 1500 TRX, the new hot pickup truck coming out of the FCA stable. What'd you think?
Hot is the right word. Ram, just as a reminder, is claiming that this is the quickest, fastest, and most powerful mass-produced truck in the world. And John, after taking a close look at it, it lives up to the hype. Under the hood is the 6.2-liter Hemi V8 supercharged, making the 702 horsepower, 650 pound-feet of torque in a straight line. 0 to 60 comes in 4.5 seconds, 0 to 100 in 10.5 seconds. Unreal times from a vehicle that really is at home off-road. And then for those that do want to go to the quarter mile, it will turn a 12.9 seconds at 108 miles per hour time. And top speed is 118 miles an hour. And John, it sounds awesome starting up. Here's what it sounds like. got such an aggressive tone, John, and a couple observations about the truck. I think that, Ram is on target with what they're going to accomplish, which is basically they want to dethrone the Ford Raptor as king of the off-road segment. And I mean, Ram is coming out strong. Some of the fun, besides the numbers, which clearly show that that will be the case, some of the fun things is that, that FCA has a long-standing history of including Easter eggs with their products. You see those a lot on Jeeps. There's a couple Easter eggs that are dyno-themed on the TRX. Like you pointed out on one of our first shows talking about the TRX, Ram is playing off of that T-Rex motif, clearly going after Raptor. So you've got this head-to-head dyno battle, and Ram is not shying away. One of the Easter eggs is underneath the hood. If you pop the massive engine air cover, there's a big old T-Rex head, and in its mouth is a Raptor hanging limp. So that's kind of a fun T-Rex, a little whimsical. And then there's another one in the center console. Ram has provided a handy little scale chart showing the TRX truck compared to the size of a man, and then you see the scale of an actual Tyrannosaurus Rex, and then ahead of it, you see the little size of the Raptor. So again, all of that's in the center console. It's always fun when those Easter eggs are there. I don't know if the Ford crew will think that, but I'm sure the Ram guys had fun doing that.
Well, as we know, Ford's got some horsepower increase planned for the Raptor. We're keeping an eye on that. One thing that I found kind of fascinating, Matt, in the event that a valet driver is stimulated by the exhaust note, you can put the Ram 1500 TRX into valet mode, reducing that power from 702 down to 300, down to a little bit more of a modest level to hopefully keep things under control if you have to valet park. Chrysler was there too and had a couple of their 2021 Pacifica minivans. A couple of things that we learned. There's an upscale version that has been released called the Pinnacle. We had a chance to look at it. It is quite stunning with a very upscale interior. And they're also pushing all-wheel drive this year. They made just a handful of their all-wheel drive versions in the 2020 model year, but really pushing that for 2021. And definitely taking the Pacifica and moving it upscale and keeping more of the entry-level minivan now with their slightly decontented Voyager, which is essentially has replaced the Dodge Grand Caravan, no longer in production. So if you want an FCA minivan, you got your choice between two different distinct models. You go with an entry-level Voyager, bringing back a name from the past, which is really cool, from Plymouth, or the new upscale Pacifica, really a sharp-looking van. What'd you think of those?
I thought the Pinnacle was really attractive. It's interesting that FCA has recognized that there is a type of shopper that wants a premium minivan. I mean,
right.
You typically think, obviously, minivans are great for hauling cargo or families, but it seems like more and more that customers are wanting that premium offering. I think they're on target with offering kind of exclusive colors, both inside and out. I really like the second row captain's chairs. You get pillows. What are your thoughts, John? Where do you see that van coming in from a price point standpoint?
I think it's going to appeal to a whole new type of a minivan buyer. Typically, you want one that's going to be easy to clean and take care of, get the kids in and out of. But this one's not going to be that way with that plush, light-colored interior. But keep in mind, for the 2021 model years, there's 4 different distinct models. Prices start at about $35,000, and a loaded Pinnacle is going to be well over $50,000, all being powered by the same engine, the tried-and-true 3.6-liter Pentastar V6. Front-wheel drive is standard, with all-wheel drive as optional on all 4 of those models. And I think if I had kids again, one of these vans would be on my shopping list. I like the way they look. Have not driven one yet. Really like the way they look. The refresh they've done with the front and the rear. They've added some extra soundproofing, thicker glass, better door seals to give it more of an upscale personality. I think they've got a winner with that, with the refreshed vans for 2021.
Well, speaking of winners, John, I think Jeep has one in their hands. We also got the chance to see and experience the concept Grand Wagoneer. Jeep is touting this as the return of a premium American icon. Wagoneer launched in '62 as a '63 model, right. And then in 1984, we saw the Grand Wagoneer surface as kind of that premium off-roader, and it seems like Jeep is going right back there. The one that we got to see is the concept one that has the Arctic Ice paint. Some of the things that I really liked about it is up front, there's the illuminated letters above the grille that spell out Wagoneer. Just a really neat, high-class touch. Inside, there is 45 inches up front in the first row of total screen span. Really nice presentation. The second row has 30 inches of screen span, so it seems like that is probably only going to be a sign of things to come. And then speaking of expanse, I really liked up top, there's a lot of buzz has been with that full-length sunroof that has the map of Detroit. Definitely a very concept car feature, but one that I think we could see on the actual production vehicle.
Right, and I think it's important to note, Matt, that what we saw was the concept. Now, it looked pretty much production ready to me, and they were keeping a lot of the information, specifics, secret for right now. As an example, we don't know what kind of powertrains are going to be offered, but I think both of us were just bowled over by the upscale commanding presence that this vehicle certainly has, ready to go head-to-head with a couple of heavy hitters in that market right now, Cadillac Escalade, Lincoln Navigator. I think it's going to be targeted right there. I did ask the rep, I said, hey, I've noticed there's no Jeep nameplates on this. Is this going to be a separate brand, the Wagoneer brand? And he smiled and said that no official word on exactly how it was going to be formally branded, but from the twinkle in his eye and the smile that he had when I asked him the question, I'm thinking this is going to be a whole new line of vehicles out of the Jeep stable under the Wagoneer nameplate. I'm guessing the one we saw, top of the line, and I'm going to predict, $100,000 price range, pretty expensive, but probably we're going to see a straight Wagoneer also being offered with a lot less content, maybe somewhere in the $60,000 range. No price was given to us. What do you think the pricing structure is going to be on this thing? Any thoughts or ideas?
Well, like you said, I kind of like the tiered strategy that they'll have a lower price point Wagoneer, and then if you want to, go all the way up, you can get the Grand Wagoneer. I fully expect a base Wagoneer in the 60s, and then I wouldn't be surprised if that fully loaded Grand Wagoneer, close to what we saw with all the bells and whistles, probably close to six figures. So what about you? What are your thoughts on pricing?
Yeah, no, I think that's where I think that's the overall consensus, is that's probably where it's going to land, with entry level Wagoneer maybe competing quite favorably with maybe like a Chevy Tahoe. Hey, that wasn't all that Jeep had brought that was getting a lot of headlines. You had a chance to take a look at their 4xe, their hybrid Wrangler. What'd you think of that one?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is that they're very easy to spot because they are all getting blue accents, which I thought was kind of neat. You got the blue tow hooks and you've got the blue surround behind the badges. As a reminder that it is going to be available in early 21, and Jeep is promising 25 miles of full electric range, and then after that, the 2-liter turbocharged four-cylinder engine will cycle on. And their Jeep is claiming 50 mpge. So it's kind of interesting, John, because we've talked about, where does a vehicle like this fit in the lineup? And I think it's a good choice to start moving the brand towards overall electric vehicles. I don't think that these will be a huge seller, but I think there will be a growing niche of Jeep owners that want something different, and I think this is the ticket.
Well, and they've packed it with plenty of power. You mentioned the 2-liter turbocharged four-cylinder engine. With the hybrid assist, putting out about 350 horsepower, so not bad. Some of us that were there from the press had questions in regards to the weight with the battery, and they said, yeah, it's definitely heavier than a standard Wrangler, but they did a nice factual spin and said that the batteries are mounted down low, taking the center of gravity and moving it down. Always a plus for heavy off-roading. But I think the thing I'm going to take away the most of it, Matt, was just the unique look that you had mentioned. It definitely looks, traditional Wrangler in its overall appearance, but those extra blue touches just really set it apart. Got a great, great look.
The other thing, too, John, that I learned that I think will also help the Jeep faithful is that Jeep has everything sealed and waterproof, so the 4xe still retains 30 inches of water fording, which I know would probably be a concern, but Jeep says no problem.
Yeah, it seems like they've got it figured out. It certainly looked production ready. No pricing on that yet, but I would expect we'd be getting more information. Staying in the Wrangler family, the one vehicle in the Jeep lineup that I was really anxious to see, and I'm glad it was there, was the infamous 392 Wrangler, the V8 Jeep, putting out about 450 horsepower. It also had a very, very aggressive look. What'd you think?
I think it's something that enthusiasts have been longing and wanting for, although I'm not sure, it was hard to get a reading on, is this going to move from concept to production?
Right.
I really liked the half doors on the side. I thought it had a great look to it. They also gave that one really nice copper or bronze accents. I thought that was kind of a cool little thing. But I'm with you. I mean, I think more power is always good, and this one looks to deliver with a 0 to 60 time of less than 5 seconds. I say to Jeep, let's get that thing in showrooms.
It looked like it would be production ready. The thing that really makes it stand out is a huge 392 badges, not just decals, but nice three-dimensional badges that were on the hood, really giving it a very aggressive look. And we got our fingers crossed that Jeep is going to put that one in production. All indications so far is a V8 Jeep is definitely forthcoming. We just don't know when.
You've been listening to Mecum Presents On the Move, brought to you by State Farm. For more information, visit mecum.com. And join us again next time as we take you inside the world of muscle and collector cars and more.